Hey everybody, we're here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook. He's Jason, I'm Chucky. This is a sports betting podcast, Bookends, powered by STN Sports. And Jay, before we kind of dive into college and pro football this week, there's a lot of other stuff going on. Some good, some not so good. Let's start with the good, and that's the Vegas Golden Knights.
Well, I would put that in the not so good.
Not so good for our side of the counter, but great for you guys. 9-0-1. I mean, best start ever for a defending champ. I was fortunate. I was at the one when they happened to lose in overtime to the Blackhawks. Being from Chicago, as we both are, I did have my Tony O jersey on. Still a Knights fan too, but rooting for the Hawks that day. That was actually a terrific outcome for us. But hats off to the Knights. Great start, but really great for you guys. I think the only thing that's really helped us is that most of their games have stayed under, and they haven't covered the puck line. And I think more than half of those games.
Yeah, and what's really surprising from the Knights standpoint is 9-0-1, and you look back at half the games against the Jets, against the Flyers, against Montreal the other night, they're getting outplayed in these games. They're getting outshot in these games. The other team actually looks like the better team on the ice, yet the Knights continue to find a way to put the biscuit in the back of the net. The shootout goals have been absolutely fantastic for them.
But
and
isn't that the sign of a good team, though?
Yeah.
Is when you can turn it up, like when you know that, hey, we haven't played our best game in any sport. We're getting late in the game. Let's turn it up a notch, and that's what they've done.
Yeah, and that's what makes it even more scary from where these Knights are and where the potential for them to go. We saw Pietrangelo miss a bunch of games. You see Martinez now back on the ice, so they haven't even had the full pieces of the puzzle all playing together, yet they're able to put this incredible start, to start a season after winning a Stanley Cup championship.
Right. Just, again, really, really good start. You guys have done well on them so far, so kudos. It's go Knights, go, I guess, from your side, and our side, it's no Knights, no, but they are playing really well, so congratulations and good start to the Knights. Now the not so good, and we're going to go to the gridiron, and that's the Las Vegas Raiders. Get beat on Monday night against the Lions. Really looked like the Lions probably could have put up 40 or 50 points if they really wanted to that night. The week before, they lose to Tyson Bagent, the Division II quarterback for the Bears, which is like unbelievable that a Division II quarterback came in and beat an NFL defense. And you look at Josh McDaniel, he's the only coach ever in NFL history to be with two different teams, to get fired in the second year of that tenure as head coach for both those teams. And I know you've got some kind of compelling stats of why the Raiders have been so bad for the last 2 years.
I mean, we talk about McDaniel, but again, the Raiders went and completely cleaned house, took McDaniel, we take the GM, we take the offensive coordinator. So as we look at this week's game against the Giants, where they're a small favorite over the Giants at home this week.
Will they be at kickoff, though?
Keeps kind of scratching your head as watching this Raider team, and especially their performance over the last 2 weeks. But I don't think that this McDaniel decision and the GM decision, the offensive coordinator decision, goes back to just the last 2 weeks or how they've looked this year. Obviously, last year we had several games. They had a 20-0 lead in Week 3 at home against the Arizona Cardinals, a game that they blew in overtime. They went to New Orleans last year and lost 24-0 in a game that they never crossed midfield. They lost to the Indianapolis Colts in Jeff Saturday's taking over the interim head coach of the Colts, who had never coached.
It's a high school coach.
Beyond high school, and he goes and beats the Raiders. They lost to the Los Angeles Rams, who had just acquired Baker Mayfield 2 days prior to the game, and Baker Mayfield was able to go ahead and beat the Raiders in those games.
Not only that, Baker Mayfield actually got the playbook emailed to him, and he read the playbook on the flight, arrived, and was able to run that offense against the Raiders and beat them on prime time.
So I mean, those losses combined with where they're at this year, at 9-16 since McDaniel has taken over the realm. This year they're 31st in total offense, 32nd or last in the league in yards per rush, and 30th in points per game. And that's just not getting it done, especially when you talk about this regime took over for the Rich Bisaccia, John Gruden era, where they were 10-7 and they made a playoff appearance, and then decided to go this McDaniel way, and were hoped to be on an upward trajectory, acquiring Davante Adams, and they've been nothing but underperformed since that time.
I think when you look at the offense, and I understand the new regime, and they say, well, the Patriots way just takes a little time, but when you look at Josh Jacobs,
or a guy named Tom Brady, because the Patriots way is not succeeding right now either.
You look at Josh Jacobs, who led the league in rushing last year. He has the lowest yards per carry since I think 1973 for any defending rushing champion. Not only do you have Devontae Adams, but you pick up Jacoby Myers. You make the trade of Waller, and you draft Mayer, who's been really good too. So you've got some young, talented, good skill position players,
2021,
but they can't generate it.
2021, Hunter Renfrow had 103 receptions. Hunter Renfrow has 10 catches this year on 16 targets.
2022, Hunter Renfrow was an all-pro. Guess what he is this year? Relegated to the bench. I just don't get it. But you would think he would have been in that Wes Welker kind of role, Danny Amendola kind of role with this team. And that's what he was for those first 2 years with a lot of success with Gruden and Bisaccia.
Clearly, obviously, the injuries to Garoppolo and him coming back, the underperformance of Devontae Adams having some bad games. Renfro's been nothing. Jacobs has been nothing. That's how you get GMs and coaches fired. And hopefully the Raiders will move on from here, and we'll see some success down the line and maybe some better draft picks and see how they rebuild this unit.
It's going to be a rebuilding process, though. There's no question at all that they're going to need to kind of look at free agency, the draft. We know that the draft with Williams and Drake May and McCarthy, you're going to have some big-name QBs coming out. Just don't know where they'll be position-wise to grab one of those guys. Before we dive into the college and pro slate, Jay, the trade deadline in pro football was this week, and there were some big-name guys that were moved, and one of the questions that was kind of asked is, who had the biggest impact? To me, it's only one guy, and that's Chase Young. I mean, when you get a guy with that talent, the number 2 overall pick, who, when healthy, is a disruptor. He's a sack machine. He goes to that San Francisco's 49er defense that has been rather unimpressive the last 3 weeks, but what a difference maker he can be for only a third-round pick. I think he's more of a rental, but you can tell the Niners are in a win-now mode, and I think that pushes that defense over the top.
Yeah, and not to mention the Niners also acquired Randy Gregory, to that as well. So
a few weeks ago, but right.
They've kind of made those moves. To me, there's 2 of them. I really like what the Eagles did in acquiring safety Kevin Byrd from the Titans.
Right.
Part of that, and again, I'm looking at the teams that are sitting at the top, talking about teams that are going to make the playoffs and trying to make this stretch run to go through the playoffs, and I think that's a big addition on their back end, knowing that they're going to have to go beat a Cowboys or some other offensive weapon. To have Kevin Beard, an all-pro, go in that secondary, short up some of that secondary. He was able to already start the game against the Commanders this past week. I think he had like 7 tackles, so I think that was a big pickup for them. I also like Rasul Douglas from the Green Bay Packers. A cornerback was traded to the Bills this week.
He's the other guy that I had marked as well.
We see the Bills struggle so far this season, but again, that offense is too powerful, too good to hold them down. They're going to find their way in the playoffs. Douglas has been extremely upset with the Packers and the fact that they're not winning games. I think he brings a chip on his shoulders to this Bills defense, who's lost a ton of guys, lost White in their secondary.
Yeah, Tre'Davious White's the big loss, Matt Milano at linebacker, and then Ed Oliver's been banged up too. So you really lost about 25% of your starting defense, guys that were impact players, and I think Douglas really helps out on that back end.
A big addition there. Leonard Williams from the Giants makes his way up to Seattle with San Francisco's recent struggles and losing 3 straight. The Seahawks have found themselves leading the division. I think that's a good add for them. And then a kind of a sleeper one that not a lot of people are talking about, but Ezra Cleveland was an offensive tackle for the Minnesota Vikings, got traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars sit at 6-2. They're the team that kind of nobody's talking about on the AFC side of things, but this team is slowly but surely winning games. They shore up their offensive line. That was one of the spots that they maybe had a hole. They go get Cleveland, shore up that hole to protect Lawrence. Etienne's been absolutely fantastic, and really the Jaguars haven't been winning these games too much on offense. They've been doing it with defense. So if they can get that offense going again, maybe there's an opportunity for them to find their way through this AFC. So from my standpoint, those are the 4 guys that I really liked and the deals that were made for those 4 teams.
On the flip side, one of the questions that was posed is who didn't get moved that maybe we were surprised didn't? I mean, there's names like Devontae Adams, Burns from the Panthers, Saquon Barkley, Hunter from the Vikings, Derrick Henry, Judy, Surtain, and Sutton, all from the Broncos, Mike Evans, T. Higgins, D-Hop, Hunter Renfrow, Jacoby Brissett, and Carl Lawson. For me, a little bit, maybe it's Saquon Barkley, is that I think teams like the Bills were definitely interested. There's a few teams that I think he could have kind of changed those teams. I know the Giants said they weren't going to move him. He came back and signed with them. This probably is going to be his last year with the Giants. This is where they really could have gotten something. But for me, I think it was Barkley and, of course, Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah, and I'm going to go and I don't understand what the Titans are doing with Derrick Henry. Maybe they just weren't getting the offers that they were interested in, but I I thought for sure Derrick Henry was going to get moved from the Titans and find a spot into a playoff team that really was looking for another guy that could bang the football, especially as we get to playoff football. That was probably the biggest one for me. There's a couple other out there.
Henry at 29 usually, and he's been phenomenal throughout his entire career, is that you start to see running backs start to do this a little bit, and that's been the case this year. I don't know if it's a product of that they really haven't had a quarterback, although Will Levis played phenomenal in his first game this year, 4 touchdown passes, really seemed to have a rapport with Hop to help that offense a little bit, but he hasn't been the same Derrick Henry. I'm guessing it's a product of that offense not being able to throw. He's facing 8 and 9 guys in the box, but he has carried the ball more than anyone in the NFL over the last 4 years.
Yeah, and I know Denver's coming off the big win over the Chiefs this week, but Jerry Jeudy was another name that was expected to be traded, expected to be shipped out to somewhere to find a spot, and the Denver holds on to him. So that might have been one of the other surprises of the guy that doesn't move.
I think Steve Smith kind of vetoed that to every team in the league. Just saying. All right, guys, we're going to jump into college football right now. We're going to jump into college slate.
Before we jump into the college slate, just want to do a little bit of a recap of something that we talked about last week, and that I had my graphics up here, and we put the board up, and we talked about...
Those were phenomenal graphics, too. I mean, really, really cool.
We talked about the number of outright underdogs of a touchdown or more. Call it $2 dogs or more in college football that have been winning this year. And on average, it was about 5 dogs a week of plus 200 or more winning. And this past week, and it's kind of maybe see my my orange notes there, but this past week, there were 9...
Blow it up, Johnny. Blow it up.
There were 9 underdogs of $2 or more that won games outright. And there was another half dozen, talk about a Cal who was an 11-point underdog, loses by 1 to USC. We saw 2 20-point favorites win by a field goal. So, I mean, we're just yelling at you. We're telling you these dogs are out there. And then this week, 9 touchdown underdogs win outright. So again, take a look at this week's sheets. Take a look at the app. Find the underdogs are going to win. Circle them up. You're going to find at least another 5 dogs, $2 or more. They're going to put a win on the board this week.
I was going to put on the dog mask and howl like a dog, but
it's
Jay,
not.
He told me I couldn't do it.
And again, we're not immune to college football. Denver Broncos, 7-point underdogs to Kansas City Chiefs. Probably killed more tickets than anything this week. There was a lot of winning wagers in the NFL this week. The morning slate was absolutely fantastic for our guests. And then the afternoon slate, where we saw the Cincinnati Bengals knock off the Niners. We saw the Broncos knock off the Chiefs outright. And we saw a miracle backdoor cover
by the Cardinals against the Ravens.
In that game. So the afternoon slate didn't go their
way.
Who
says you can't get an onside kick in pro football?
But again, the underdogs are there. Continue to look at those underdogs. You'll cash more tickets.
All right. We're done with underdog for now. We're going to jump into college football. Here we go.
Find those underdogs.
25th ranked Kansas State. 7th ranked Texas. Texas 4.5, 49.5. Here's your gaming tidbits for this game. The total has gone under, guys, in 5 of Kansas State's last 6 games when playing on the road at Texas, where they're at. Kansas State is 4-1 against the number in their last 5 games. Texas is 5-0 straight up in their last 5 games when playing Kansas State. So something kind of has to give there. But looking at this, that total of 49.5 looks a little juicy when Kansas State is playing at Texas.
Well, Texas has won 6 straight in this meeting. We have no Quinn Ewers, Texas quarterback. We're going to go see Malik Murphy. He was solid last week in the 35-6 win over BYU, threw for 170 yards, 2 touchdowns to Adonis Mitchell. They were able to run the football. However, he did throw an interception. He did fumble. Kansas State's coming off a 41-0 drubbing against Houston. Their defense has been absolutely exceptional. They haven't allowed a touchdown in 9 quarters since that time. They're outscoring their opponents 103-3. So you talked about something's got to give here. Texas continued to roll. Kansas State defense has been awesome. Could this be a live dog? Kansas State knocks off Texas as a 7-point underdog.
We talked about it last week with the Oklahoma game. Is upset alert. This might be the upset alert this week, guys. All right, now number 14, Missouri. Number 1, Georgia. Georgia, 15.5-point favorite. 54.5 is the total. Interesting kind of tidbits here with Missouri. Missouri 7-1 straight up in their last 8 games, and they're 5-1 against the number on the road in their last 6 games they're getting over 2 touchdowns here.
Yeah, big number for them to try and cover, especially with the fact that Georgia is coming off, the biggest cocktail party, knocking off Florida, impressively knocking off Florida last week, 41-22. But I don't think Missouri is going to catch Georgia sleeping this week, because Georgia last year won this game 26-22 and were down 10 points in the fourth quarter and had to come back to win that game. No Brock Bowers here in this game, obviously the tight end for Georgia that's been out. Carson Beck, the Georgia quarterback, is getting better and better each and every week, threw for 315 yards last week, 2 touchdown passes. And I'm telling you, the guy to look out for this week, Dominic Lovett, wide receiver for Georgia, probably their go-to guy with Bowers being out. You know where he's from? He transferred from Missouri. So I think that he's going to want to put up a big game, some big numbers for them. Brady Cook is going to try and keep Missouri in this game, but Missouri's going to have to play the best offensive game they played all year, and they're going to have to not commit turnovers if they want to stay in this game, because I think this is a game that Georgia, they see those college football rankings coming out, and this is the time of year where the Georgia Bulldogs start to play their best football, and they're not going to be sleeping on Missouri because of what Missouri did to them last year.
Missouri has been red hot, though, again, straight up and against the number over their last 6 or 7 games. So keep an eye on this one to see if the number goes up or down. Now for us with West Coast bias, number 5, Washington, and they're still in the top 25, and that's number 24, USC. Washington, a 3-point favorite on the road, 76.5 the total here. Here's a couple of interesting tidbits here. Washington is 5-0 straight up in their last 5 games. They're also 5-0 straight up in their last 5 road games. Total has gone over in 5 of Southern Cal's last 5 games. The total has gone under, however, in 5 of Southern Cal's last 5 games when playing Washington. We know both these teams can light it up. You've got 2 quarterbacks that are in the Heisman discussion. It's a high total on the board. What do you think is going to happen here?
These teams don't play each other a lot. Strangely enough, both being in the Pac-12, this is their first meeting since 2019. Obviously, you talk about Penix and Caleb Williams, and you expect the scoreboard to be absolutely lit up. But for some reason, these teams have kind of slowed down. Both of those guys were Heisman Trophy favorites, have been there, but they just haven't performed in the last several weeks. For USC, it's been more on the defensive side of the football. Really struggled in their loss to Notre Dame, struggled in their loss to USC, and then
almost
were able to
lost last
squeak
week,
by with a 50-49 win over Cal this past week. So from a defensive standpoint, USC is going to have to find something, because Washington does come in with that high-powered offense. But Washington's been squeaking through their games lately as well, with 9-point win last week against Stanford. But that was their biggest win in the last 4 weeks, with the close win over Oregon. They had a close win over Arizona. They had a close win against Arizona State. So they haven't been that impressive. So I think with the fact, though, that we're talking about these 2 teams and the national television.
If you're Caleb Williams a little bit, maybe a little bit of a chip on your shoulder here because they've struggled of late. Yeah. He's kind of fallen out of the discussion as the favorite for the Heisman Trophy. Michael Penix is coming into your house, into the Coliseum to play. I'm anxious to see how Caleb Williams plays.
You talk about
here.
A chip on the shoulder at USC. They have 2 losses. Things have fallen apart for them. The tough losses, the squeak by of Cal last week. But who's got a chip on their shoulder? It's this Washington Husky team. And they've got a chip on their shoulder for one reason. Go look at the college football rankings. As they sit undefeated, yet they sit in the number 5 spot outside of those top 4.
They won't be there at the end if they stay undefeated.
They're outside that top 4, sitting in that 5 hole. They've got to be feeling disrespected at this point in time by the committee to be undefeated, yet ranked behind those other 4 undefeateds. And again, go back a game. I think that's why Georgia a little bit sitting in the 2 spot in those rankings, with Ohio State getting the number 1 ranking. Georgia might be feeling that same little bit of disrespect.
All right. Last game we're going to touch on in college football, which we think it's a really good college football slate this week. Number 13, LSU. Number 8, Alabama. Bama's the 3-point favorite. Total 61. Here's a couple of interesting gaming trends as well. Total has gone over in 5 of LSU's last 5 games. Total has gone over in LSU's last 5 games on the road at Alabama. And Alabama's 23-2 straight up in their last 25 home games. So they're a small favorite. They're at home, but there's been a lot of scoring when these 2 teams have met in Alabama over the last 5 seasons.
Yeah, and despite the fact that Alabama sits in kind of the 8th spot in the college football rankings, they're nowhere close to being out of this thing.
Oh, no.
This is a monster game for them against LSU. LSU's obviously got the 2 losses, but Jaden Daniels has been absolutely fantastic. He's worked his way back up to that Heisman Trophy, kind of the top favorites. They've been putting an electric amount of points up, but they're somewhat like this USC team in that their defense tends to fade in the big moments. They give up lots of points, but Alabama hasn't been a team that can go and absolutely put up the monster numbers. They've done it through their running game. They've done it with a solid defense. But again, I think we talk about Alabama, number 8 in the country in those college football rankings. A big win here against LSU could put them back up in that title conversation.
Every time we talk about Alabama, all I can think about is Keith Jackson and Whoa Nelly. But real quickly, though, last man standing. College football, only 18 of you guys left. So congratulations, that's phenomenal. I mean, it's really getting dwindled every single week. Usually we see it around this time. By Thanksgiving, usually it's really, a couple guys left. So 18 of you guys left. Tremendous job. Keep up the good work. And we'll see how the season finishes.
I bet they're taking the dogs.
I wonder why. Anyway, guys, we'll be right back, and we're going to jump into pro football. We'll see you in a second on the Sports Betting Podcast, Bookends.
Guess what? It's football season, baby. And you know what that means. It's time to bet your buns off. And when it comes to sports betting, you better bet with the STN Sports app. I'm talking football. All the fights. Men's and women's basketball, men's and women's soccer ball. We've got it all. And with our 14 convenient sign-up locations around town, it's no wonder they call me the Queen of Convenience. Because when I bet with STN, I feel like royalty. So what in the heck are you waiting for? Download the STN Sports app today and trust the local favorite.
Hey everybody, we're back at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends, as usual, powered by STN Sports. And this is our pro football segment now. First, we're going to look at the Thursday night game, Tennessee Titans, Pittsburgh Steelers. I think when you look at Tennessee, I mean, you have to be impressed with the way that Will Levis played in his pro football debut. 4 touchdown passes, looked really comfortable in the pocket, got Hop involved with 3 of those touchdown passes. They're on the road on prime time, playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers. A little bit different environment here, though, against the Steelers on a short week against a Mike Tomlin coach team.
Well, it's amazing that the Steelers sitting 4-3, available in division with the offense that they have, averaging 16.1 yards a game,
right,
which normally isn't going to get it done in the National Football League. But their defense has been absolutely amazing. They seem to commit key turnovers. They seem to get to turnovers that turn into points immediately as the defensive guys are scoring. This is obviously a monster start for them. There's still a question mark as to whether Kenny Pickett is going to be available. He says he's going to be available.
Right, yeah.
He's going to play. If not, they'll go to Trubisky. But they've got to find something in
real
that
quick,
passing game.
I mean, not a big drop-off. If it's Trubisky, I don't think there's any change in the line.
Well, not necessarily from a quarterback standpoint, but they've got to find something on from the offensive side of things. I mean, Deontay Johnson's done nothing. Warren's done nothing. Najee Harris
has been hurt.
Yeah,
Pickens has had some moments, but they've got some good young skill position players.
Really struggle from an offensive standpoint, and they got to be their defense has got to put them in good positions to be able to score. And you talked about Will Levis. Maybe the Titans have found something here. Obviously, Tannehill hadn't moved the team down the field with that team. The one thing that we noticed about Levis was that he wasn't afraid to throw the deep ball as Hopkins caught 4 passes. 3 of those went for touchdowns, and they went for long touchdowns. So if he's going to stretch that defense and you're going to have to try and cover Hopkins on those deep routes, now the Tennessee Titans can do what they want to do and get that play action pass and get it, look the ball to Henry. And when you come up and you have to attack Derrick Henry, now he can go over the top, and that's what the Titans want to do best. So if Levis gives them the opportunity to do that, the Titans can maybe find their way back into this things. But again, they've been a team that we've seen already trading pieces of the puzzle, but they're not out of it in the division. But the Jaguars sitting at 6-2 are really kind of leapfrogging that division and making it look like they could run away with it.
And I think in the AFC North, you commented on the Steelers being 4-3. That whole division is above 500. Even though Cleveland has had some struggles and the injury to Watson since he started off slow, but that entire division outside Baltimore 6-2, other 3 teams are all 4-3, so they've been really good. Here's my betting trend for this game, guys, and it is all about the under. The total has gone under in 5 of Tennessee's last 5 road games. This game's on the road. The total has gone under in 9 of Tennessee's last 11 games. The total has gone under in 5 of Pittsburgh's last 5 games. So these 2 teams now are on a stretch where each of them in their last 5 games has gone under. Both offenses struggle a bit.
So that means on Thursday night you should take the over.
Take the over. It'll go sailing over. I knew he was going to say that. I set myself up. I knew it. All right. Sunday football now. There's some games that aren't so good, but this has 3 of the biggest marquee games of the year on Sunday, and it all starts early in Germany at 6:30 our time. So don't forget, get on the app, get into the day before. You got that early football game, AFC maybe title preview. Miami Dolphins, Kansas City Chiefs in Germany. It's going to be a great game. I mean, these two offenses, Tyreek Hill going up against his Chiefs team. What kind of game will he have? Look for all the props on this one. Number has come down a little bit, though. It was kind of in that 2.5 range. We've started to see this number come down, so definitely some Dolphin love from you guys so far. Although, in their two toughest games of the year, against the Bills and Eagles, they did not play well this year.
Yeah, and I don't want to go back to the Taylor Swift, but I don't know if she's going to be in Germany or not in Germany, but it doesn't look like the Chiefs.
I'm going to say 9.
The Chiefs have not had too much success when she hasn't been in the building. We saw them struggle on a Monday night in Minnesota. They were able to get the win there, 27-20. But the Vikings were live and looked good in that game. And then we see them go on the road last week, and obviously one of the more shocking upsets of the week of the whole year, and go and lose to a Bronco team, which I think they had 15 or 16 straight wins against. It was expected to be potentially a snow game and some weather in the game.
I'm going to trivia question here. So every team in the league last week, scored an offensive touchdown, except one. Who was that team?
Not the team that you'd would expect, as the Chiefs were the only team in the National Football League that did not score a touchdown last week. So an absolute shock, and maybe that's why you're seeing this number come down, is that the Miami Dolphins have been absolutely fantastic. We know that they can score points. Maybe they can have some luck over in Germany, but the Chiefs have not been the Kansas City Chiefs that we have known to.
They win with defense.
Every week. It's Patrick Mahomes seems to pull out these miracles and put up big numbers, and this year that just hasn't been the Kansas City Chiefs that we get to see every week. And now there were some rumors that Patrick Mahomes was under the weather last week, played the game with the flu, and maybe that's why they underperformed in Denver. But that Denver defense really found something. We're able to control the Chiefs. I keep saying Packers for some reason, but they were able to control the Chiefs and not let the Chiefs get the ball down the field. They were able to contain Travis Kelce. They were able to contain the running game. So the Dolphins, while the Dolphins defense is not where they've excelled. They're kind of a bend but don't break defense. But on the offensive side of the football, the weapons between the Mostert, Waddle, Hill, and we saw it last week, all of those guys scoring, all of those guys contributing. If Tua can stay on his feet and get the balls to those guys, especially with Waddle being back in the offense, the Dolphins are a very, very dangerous team.
It's going to be fun to watch because no team probably knows Tyreek Hill's tendencies more than the Chiefs. But you know that he's going to want to go out and just have a phenomenal game. Just really show them that, hey, I am the number one receiver in football. You traded me. Your offense was more dynamic. I know you've won a Super Bowl since that trade, but you're really going to miss me. Here's a couple of betting trends for this game, and they're really favorable for both teams. Miami 9-2 against the number in their last 11 games. Miami getting points here, although a small number. 6-2 straight up in their last 8 games. Kansas City 10-1 straight up in their last 11 games. Kansas City is 14-2 straight up in their last 16 games, laying a very small number here.
Yeah, and you talked about the game of the week, and this week's got a couple really
monster
premium
games.
Matchups that are absolutely fantastic, and then it's got a couple of clunkers. But this one is definitely a circle on the calendar, and make sure that either Saturday night you get your bets in, or you're up bright and early on Sunday morning. The app opens at 6 o'clock. All of our counters will be open at 6 o'clock, so don't miss your opportunity to bet this game. It's a 6:30 start, Dolphins and Chiefs.
Yeah, early start, but what a phenomenal game to watch to kind of kick off the day. As we move on Sunday, Atlanta and Minnesota. And I think you look at this game, and the first question is that what's going to happen now with Minnesota without Kirk Cousins? You might not love Kirk Cousins, but he has really played well over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Minnesota's now 4-4. They were doing this without Justin Jefferson. What does it mean not having him now? And unfortunately, they don't have a lot behind him, although they traded for Josh Dobbs.
It's a massive change. The Vikings were really based on Cousins' ability to play, his ability to get the ball out quickly and run that offense. And now the change to Jaron Hall, who's essentially an unproven rookie, a 5th-round rookie. And they acquired Dobbs this week from the Cardinals. And I don't know how much we're going to see of him. Maybe he gets a sprinkling of the package for him to be able to play. But this is a major drop off for the Vikings to not have him, let alone, as you said, without Justin Jefferson, and to be playing with a a little bit of less of a package with Addison.
They finally got their first rushing touchdown last week.
Well, and Cam Akers.
And it was Cam Akers.
We talked about the trade deadline and bigger acquisitions. That was one that we didn't bring up. But Cam Akers really took the job away from Alexander Mattson, and Akers has been really, really good. But this puts them in a tough situation. But there's a kind of a tough situation on the other side is Atlanta, who's also sitting 4-4, leading the division. They're going to make a change from Desmond Ridder to Tyler Heineke, who they got from the Commanders early in the season. So this game's got all kinds of quarterback question marks, and the Atlanta Falcons, we're still questioning kind of what they're doing on the offensive side of the football, which, you know, you draft Bijan Robinson, you're not using him. I know everyone that's playing fantasy continues to get frustrated with the Falcons as we continue to see Tyler Algier sprinkled in there, Patterson sprinkled in there. They also have Drake London, their number one receiver, who's a question mark for this game. So a lot of question marks on the Atlanta side. Even more question marks on the Minnesota side with the quarterback. And so you talk about two teams that have been playing very good. Question maybe, is this a game that you could look to bet under with knowing that these offenses are going to have to look to run the football and not make mistakes?
With that under comment, I'm going to give you kind of the betting trends again for this week, for this game, and it all screams under. The total has gone under in 5 of Minnesota's last 5 games, so 5 straight. The total has gone under in 8 of Minnesota's last 9 games when playing on the road against Atlanta. The total has gone under in Atlanta in 8 of Atlanta's last 9 games when playing Minnesota, and Atlanta has gone under in 5 straight games. So we kind of touched on it last week where unders now are hitting at a clip of around 63%. There just hasn't been that same scoring with all the rule changes. But these last 2 games we talked about, a lot of trends toward the under, and this one really screams under. So as Jay said earlier, probably bet the over.
Well, and Atlanta did struggle with the deep ball last week. We were able to see Levis and Hopkins throw those deep balls. So maybe that's one of the things that Jaron Hall and Jordan Addison can look for, is to try and take those deep shots and stretch that Atlanta secondary to where maybe they can run the ball or get Akers out of the backfield. But I do expect them. That's one thing that rookie quarterbacks can do, is drop back that 5-step drop or that 7-step drop and just chuck it and hope one of their guys come down with it.
Don't you think a lot of the unders this year, though, it's really a product of the quarterbacks? I know you've talked about the offensive line play, but you look at how many quarterbacks that we think are probably number 2s that are starting, and how many young quarterbacks are starting on a weekly basis now.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it at length with the quarterback-driven league and the offenses that have success. It's built through the offensive line, and it's the young kids that are coming out, and even the quality quarterbacks, the guys that have done it for years. If you don't have an offensive line that can protect you, it's tough to win. And we go back now. The Bengals have kind of shored things up. They've won 3 straight, but their struggles in their first 4 games,
offensive line driven.
Losses, they could not protect Joe Burrow, and we know that Burrow, when he gets the ball to Chase, when he gets the ball to Higgins, when he gets the ball to Boyd, they're a dynamic team. But if he can't be protected, the Bengals can't win, and that's what we're seeing, and I think that's what we're seeing lead wide. When you don't have a quarterback that can take those drops and be protected, it's going to be tough to score points.
All right, so here's another game now, AFC against NFC, and it's 2 first-place teams. That's the Baltimore Ravens against the Seattle Seahawks. It's the Seahawks that are in first place in the AFC West, not the 49ers after losing 3 straight. And that was one of the questions that was sent into us is, are the Ravens for real? Are they the best team in the AFC? I think they're really good, and quietly they're 6-2, but I'm not sold on them being the best team yet. They still seem to play to the level of their opponent. They're a little erratic at times, so I'm not completely sold yet, but over the last month they've really started to kind of straighten things out. Lamar doesn't look like the same Lamar to me yet, but he needs some of these receivers to kind of develop a little bit. Mark Andrews finally had a touchdown pass last week, but very quietly, they're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the AFC.
Yeah, and Andrews, he had 2 touchdowns the week before and a touchdown last week, so obviously Lamar and him have that connection, but it's the lack of the connection to Beckham or Flowers or Bateman and getting anybody else involved in that passing game. So when you think about the back half of the season here, or as they go into the playoffs, if somebody's able to take Mark Andrews out of that mix and you can focus on Lamar Jackson trying to run the football, somebody's going to be able to figure that out, and it's going to be tough for them to make a playoff run without these receivers getting into it. That being said, they're 6-2. They look absolutely fantastic. We were able to get a backdoor cover out of the Cardinals on one of the best onside kicks I've seen in quite some time. But this is a Seahawk team that just seems to be finding their way and finding ways with different guys.
JSN's getting more involved.
We talked about Kenneth Walker being able to run the football. Zach Charbonnet gets sprinkled in. You talk about Lockett and Bobo and Smith Najigma getting mixed in.
Right.
When these guys are able to play complementary pieces and they're not turning the football over, Seattle's going to be able to stay in games. They have a solid defense. The Browns were able to come back a little bit on them last week, but this is a team that's built to win, and there's no surprise that they're leading this division with the Niners falling apart, and this could be a live dog as they do have the ability to run the football and do all the things that could give Baltimore some issues.
And really, when you think about it, they were the first team to go out and make a trade at the deadline when they picked up Leonard Williams the day before. That's really going to help them as well. They give up a second and a fifth for Leonard Williams, but that's kind of maybe their Achilles heel a little bit. It's been on defense. I know I've said this before, but I prefer a good cab over a Charbonnet.
Well, but
it's,
again, one of their reasons is in the defensive secondary,
right,
which Baltimore hasn't shown the ability to exploit that yet. We haven't seen the Flowers or Beckham, and I say that not able to exploit. They've had success pushing the ball down the field, but it's in getting pass interference calls. We don't see Odell Beckham coming down with those big catches, but we do see him drawing some key pass interference calls. So if they're able to do that, it's a way of moving the football. But I do think Seattle has found something on offense, and they've got weapons galore that they can kind of get the football out to.
So we've talked about two really good games. That's the early game in Germany between Kansas City and Miami. I think this game very quietly is a really good game too. But the next two games to me are just phenomenal games on Sunday and then Sunday night. And this is an NFC East battle between the Cowboys and Eagles. We know the history of these two teams. Over the last couple of weeks, the Cowboys have played a little bit better. They really beat up the Rams last week. And that's kind of one of the narrative now. Are the Cowboys back? Are they a team to be reckoned with? And for me, it's still a little bit the unpredictability. The fact that they were beaten by the Cardinals, that they just were crushed when they played the 49ers, and it's a Niners team that has really struggled of late. And I really thought that they would make a deal at the trade deadline. Losing Diggs on the back end, not having that spot, I really thought they'd go out and get a DB to help. Yet they've given up only 120 points this year. They're the most stingiest defense in the league. And they're playing this Eagle team that offensively, with A.J. Brown and Smith and a host of running backs with Jalen Hurts and Goddard, is really clicking on all cylinders. Eagles are a very small field goal favorite here, Jay.
Yeah, and the Eagles struggled last week at the Commanders. Strangely enough, the Commanders, for some reason, have the Eagles' number. The Eagles were able to go into Philadelphia with a chance to actually go for a 2-point conversion late in the game to win a game, win in overtime, and of course the Eagles won that game in overtime, and then again gave them struggles this past week. A.J. Brown has been absolutely unbelievable. If we talk about an MVP candidate from a wide receiver position, this has got to be the guy. I think he's 6 games in a row now, over 125 yards receiving, which is absolutely incredible on this team where they have all the weapons. They want to run the football, sprinkle in some Devonta Smith, sprinkle in some Goddard. This is why they're the NFC favorite. This is why they're sitting with only that one loss. But Dallas is a team that can beat them. If they can come and play the game like they did last week, they controlled Cooper Kupp, they controlled Puka Nacua. The defense has the ability to stand up, make big plays. If Dak Prescott doesn't turn the ball over, Tony Pollard is able to have those big runs. That's why you see the Eagles kind of a short of a field goal. They're a touchdown favorite, but it's kind of leaning
field goal favorite,
kind of leaning more to the 2.5. And we've seen some Cowboy money here. But again, that's why we talked about there's going to be some great games this week. And believe me, this Dallas Cowboy team wants to make a statement in this game, wants to be able to make the statement that they're there to play in this NFC and to be able to go to Philadelphia. No better time to make that statement.
I mean, we won't be in the locker room, so we can't see the bulletin board in the Philadelphia Eagle locker room. But I'm guessing that statement from 3 weeks ago from a certain owner of the Dallas Cowboys that said in the NFC, the Super Bowl goes through San Francisco, is going to be pinned on there pretty big, I would think. A couple of interesting betting trends here. These two teams, the last 5 times when Dallas and Philly have played each other, we've been screaming about the under. Last 5 times when these two play, it's all gone over. Dallas 4-1 against the number in their last 5 games when playing Philadelphia. So, as Jay mentioned, a couple of trends there that kind of favor the Cowboys getting points
and
here.
One of the things the Eagles have been doing is turning the ball over. We saw several turnovers in the red zone. That's why the Commanders were able to stay in that game last week. uncharacteristic fumbles that are coming from Hurts, coming from their wide receivers. So if Dallas is going to stay in this game, I think it's going to have to be on the defensive side of the football with a couple of those punch-outs or a couple of big turnovers, because Philadelphia, we do know that they're going to move the ball up and down the field.
So Sunday Night Football now, another game that we could kind of make a case in the AFC could be an AFC title preview, and that's the Bills at the Bengals. Bengals a small favorite here. Although this number has started to trickle down a bit. Joe Burrow seems to be getting healthy. I think he had 43 yards rushing against the 49ers. That was really impressive over the last several weeks or last several games, excluding their bye. 8 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. Cincinnati back-to-back years starts 0-2. Seem to be getting right at the right time right now against the Bills team that we all think is really good. They still seem to be turn the ball over at the most inopportune times. They did go out and help on that defense, getting Douglas. I think it's a great game on Sunday Night Football. Again, Bengals are a very small favorite.
Yeah, and this was the game we all wanted to see last year, Week 17, Bills at Bengals, and Unfortunately, Damar Hamlin had the injury that essentially canceled that game. They weren't able to play it, and Cincinnati early in that game looked absolutely fantastic. They were throwing the ball all over the Bills. The Bengals looked like they were going to be a winner on that game. You talked about the struggles of both these two teams, and can they get themselves back to the elite of the AFC? And I don't even think that's even part of the conversation. I think these two teams are the elite of the AFC. They've come out really, really slow. I think that they're going to find their way. I think we'll find both of these two teams making their way into the playoffs with some late season success. But this game's one that's been circled for me for quite some time, because I do think Cincinnati kind of had their number, and we'll see if the Buffalo can kind of match what they saw early last year. And I think we'll see if Damar Hamlin, maybe there's a spotlight on him early in the game. But the Bills have struggled, but again, I don't think this team continues their struggles. They will find a way to get the football out. You've talked about the early success of Knox being out, of Dalton Kincaid having some success there. But they need to get the running game going. They've got to get James Cook a little bit more involved in this
sign
offense.
Leonard Fournette as well. Don't know what kind of game shape he's in or how quick he'll make an impact. But he's the guy that we expected would get signed at some point, so maybe he helps that Bills running game a bit.
They got to get the running game going, because the Achilles heel for the Bills these last several losses has been the Josh Allen turnovers and not being able to throw the football where he needs to, and kind of leaving the other team in the game with a chance to win it.
You talk about the AFC, Jay, and you said, are these two teams elite? But you've got Kansas City and Miami playing. We touched on Jacksonville. We touched on Baltimore. And now you have Buffalo and Cincinnati playing. These are all playoff teams we expect to be there and are all really, really good teams. Here's some quick betting trends for these two as well. The total has gone under in 9 of Buffalo's last 11 games on the road. The total has gone under in 4 of Buffalo's last 5 games when playing Cincinnati, but the Bengals are 4-1 against the number in their last 5 when playing the Bills.
Yeah, and outside of this game, one of the things to also look at this week, we kind of sit here in the Las Vegas 70-degree weather all the time, and we forget about, as we turn the calendar to November, that there's weather all over the country. I know there were in Minnesota and Chicago, they had snow yesterday. And as you look at the NFL slate, and this even goes back to your college slate, take a close look at the weather, because things are going to start to get chilly back east and in the Midwest. Potential for a lot of rain, or there's several rain games within the schedule this week on the NFL. As we sit here midweek, they're projecting rain in several of the games this week. So again, pay attention to the weather as you look through your college and pro football slates.
All right, we're going to finish it off with Monday Night Football. Chargers at the Jets. It's hard to believe the Jets are above 500. I mean, they've really, they found a way to win against the Giants. They just seem to find a way to win late. Chargers beat up the Bears last week on Sunday Night Football, but they still have a lot of issues. It just seems like there's always something that hurts the Chargers. They're a small 3-point favorite in this game. Really an important game to both teams, because we touched on 6 teams in the AFC that are really good. There's one playoff spot left. And if the Chargers hope to be that team, they really need to kind of turn it around the second half of the season. The Jets Jets are keeping their fingers crossed. Everybody's saying the right things. They didn't go out and get a quarterback because just maybe a certain quarterback might be back later in the season.
Well, they need him back. We talked about Zach Wilson's ups and downs, and there's more downs than there's been ups. They really should have lost last week to the Giants. The missed kick by Gano, the going down the field and able to get the snap and get the the spike of the ball to be able to get their field goal off, and then obviously to win in the overtime. That was kind of a minor miracle for the Jets, but they just continue to struggle on offense. Now, that being said, as much as the Chargers beat the crap out of the Bears on Sunday night, the Bears did move the ball up and down the field. The Chargers jumped out to a really early lead that kind of put the Bears up against it, and the Bears crossed midfield several times and kept electing to not go for field goals, making that game kind of more of a blowout than what it should have been. So their defense is not all that good. They were able to put pressure on the quarterback, which is probably the worst thing that the Jets would like to see. Is that Mac and that Bosa defense are able to get pressure on the Jets, and that spells doom for the Jets. But if they're able to throw some screen passes, Breece Hall, when he has the ball in his hands, seems to be absolutely electric, whether it's on screen passes or long runs. He could be a problem for the Chargers. And if Zach Wilson can find a way to get the ball to Garrett Wilson, he's another dynamic player.
Chargers D is still ranked in the bottom third of the league.
And that Jets defense is absolutely fantastic. It's just a matter of how long can they go before the Chargers find that little hole. The Chargers have so many weapons with Allen and Eckler and now introducing the young man that they got from TCU, Johnston.
Oh, Johnson,
getting him more involved in the offense. They just have
he had his best game last week against the Bears.
So many different guys that they can get the ball to, and that forces the defense to kind of expand. Maybe the Jets, like you talked about, have that Staley thing going for him, and that he seems to make questionable decisions at questionable times, and maybe he puts his team in another spot where the Jets can go steal this game.
Well, we talked about, a few games that really have a potential of maybe to go over. The Cowboys-Eagles game, maybe the Bills-Bengals game. This one, if you look at trends again, it just screams under, especially with the Jets defense. Total has gone under in 5 of the Chargers' last 5 games, 5 straight. The Chargers are 4-1 straight up in their last 5 games when playing the Jets. But here's the under stats that really, to me, stand out. The total has gone under in 5 of the Jets' last 6 home games. They're at home. The total has gone under in 9 of the last Jets' 12 home games. So even before this, going back to last year, they just don't generate a lot when they're playing at home.
Yeah, and you talk about all these games that we're talking about unders in, and most of you have probably noticed, but on the app, we introduced a new prop early this year that we put the Sunday home teams versus the Sunday road teams, and we give you a grand salami on it. So to essentially take, after the Thursday night game goes off, we put up the Sunday home teams versus the Sunday road teams and a salami where you can bet the over-under total amount of points scored on all of Sunday's games, or the under all the points in Sunday's games, and you can add the home or road team plus or minus the points. So you'll find that at the very top of the Pro Football menu. Surprisingly, we get a lot of wagers to it. A lot of you are really interested in playing that, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of math, where we have to go and add up all these games and double check and triple check ourselves.
We also added first half team totals.
Yep, first half team totals. So again, we talk about all these props and the menu continuing to expand just each and every week, whether it's pro football, college football, hockey, basketball. Check out the app. The props are just prevalent throughout everything that we're offering, and it's no difference in this pro football, where again the guys are continuing to put the touchdowns up, receiving yards, passing yards, rushing yards. We actually are, if you're looking forward to this year's big game, this year's Super Bowl, there's already props up on the app for this year's Super Bowl in Las Vegas.
NFC is a very small favorite right now, but that's up as well. As Jay mentioned, we're always looking to kind of add stuff, and a lot of times it's what guests request. Hey, can you guys add this to your wagering menu? We'll look at it, and we'll put something up like we did for the team first halves. Really, we're thinking about now something kind of cool, maybe with Tyreek Hill against A.J. Brown. Both are kind of on a record pace. They play in different conferences, could be on a collision course, but both those guys have been electric. Really quick before we end the show, guys, last man standing, pro football. 33 contestants left, so terrific job again. It's really dwindled down each week, but 33 of you guys left. Awesome job.
Breeders' Cup weekend, a monster horse racing weekend, both Friday and Saturday, all those Breeders' Cup championship races. Get on the app. It's still, you won't be able to play horse racing on the app unless you have the horse racing side of things. So get in Friday and Saturday, sign up for that side of the app so you can play the races or enjoy the races in any one of our great books. We also have a $10,000 Twin Q on Saturday, so you can turn $2 into $10,000 by picking the winners of 2 races on Saturday.
Yep, a lot of cool stuff going on, guys. Love when you guys come out. We know it's going to be busy this weekend, as Jay mentioned, with Breeders' Cup. We've got kiosks all over the room too. You can get in and out really quick and make your bet, or check out STN Sports. So for Jason, I'm Chucky. The Sports Betting Podcast bookends again powered by STN Sports. Good luck this week, and we'll see you guys next weekend on Bookends.